With Zack Snyder's Justice League just coming out on HBO Max, it marks the 10th installment of the DCEU movies, so I'm here to rank every single one of the movies in the DCEU. Before we get into it, let me know your rankings for all of the DCEU movies in the comments down below. Also, if you guys enjoy this content, make sure to check out my DCEU playlist up here. Without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. At number 10, we have the Justice League, the 2017 theatrical release, which was 100 times worse than the Justice League that we just saw on HBO Max. Overall, the story just made no sense, the movie wasn't cohesive at all, and everything that could possibly go wrong in a movie went wrong in that movie. Whether it was Joss Whedon's fault or Warner Brothers' fault, it didn't work out. Number 9 on the list is Suicide Squad. Now, I personally haven't seen Suicide Squad in a very long time, so my thoughts on it might be a little bit mixed up, and my memories from the movie might be a little bit fuzzy, but it was just another messy story that was ruined by Warner Brothers behind the scenes. If you guys have seen all the tweets from David Ayer, you can tell that the ending of the movie was completely changed by Warner Brothers. The movie was re-edited to tell a completely different story, and the story that David Ayer wanted to tell wasn't even in the movie. Again, just like the Justice League, it was a super messy movie. It wasn't cohesive. The villain was all over the place. I think the characters in the movie were good. Like, the characters that they chose were really good and they meshed well together, but overall as a movie, it didn't necessarily work out for me. Number 8 on the list is Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. Even with the Ultimate Edition, I felt like this movie at 3 hours long was too jam-packed with content. It had a lot of stuff going on, such as Lex Luthor introducing Batman for the first time in the DCEU and Doomsday. Like I said before, the story is just way too compact. It tries to tell a super long story that needs to actually be explained, and they try to fit it into a super small time. It just doesn't work out. I personally rewatched BVS right before I watched the Snyder cut for Justice League, and I had a really hard time getting through it. They also introduced Wonder Woman at the end to give her own solo movie after BVS. So overall, the movie was just a really big mess. Number 7 on the list is Wonder Woman 1984. Now, this is one of the most polarizing movies in the DCEU in my opinion. It has some pretty great, awesome action sequences. It's just that the villains were kind of weird. I felt like Cheetah and Maxwell Lord were two pretty good villains, and they shouldn't have been in the same movie together. I felt like if they built out Cheetah a lot more in the movie, they honestly wouldn't have even needed Pedro Pascal, and the villains were just super weak. They were more morality beaten characters, and it just wasn't fun because we barely got to see any good action sequences between Cheetah and Wonder Woman. Whereas whenever we saw Wonder Woman fighting, for example, in the White House, I think it was, those action sequences were pretty awesome. They were all pretty great, but once it started to get to the morality side, and she was trying to use morality to bring Maxwell Lord onto the good side, it just got kind of lame. Like, we didn't get to see that raw Wonder Woman action that we got to saw in the first Wonder Woman movie. Moving on, at number 6, I have Birds of Prey. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I watched this movie, I genuinely didn't like it, and I actually had it at the bottom tier of DCEU movies, but the more I watch it, the more I start to like it. It's a lot more grounded and less mythological than the other DCEU movies. Now, this lets them have more practical stunts, and everything overall just looks a lot cooler. It's more underground. It's not like Harley Quinn is trying to save an entire city or a town or anything like that. She's doing underground crime fighting, and it's super cool to see that change of pace in the DCEU. Next on the list at number 5 is Man of Steel. Man of Steel is very polarizing in my opinion. There's either people that love it or people that hate it a lot. Now, I was in the hate train for a while, but now I'm starting to warm up to it. I've been liking it a little bit more. Henry Cavill is definitely my favorite Superman of all time. The visuals and action in this movie were off the charts, and I love General Zod as a villain, and I love the conflict and the reason that General Zod and Superman are fighting. I felt like the motive in this movie for General Zod and Superman to fight against each other was also super perfect. But one of the biggest issues with this movie was that the plot was all over the place. It tried to tell the introduction of Superman while also rushing his story really fast, and in rushing the story, we barely got to see anything of Lois Lane. Overall, the movie just felt super rushed, and that's the case with a lot of DCEU movies, and that's why the couple of the best movies in the DCEU take their time in the exposition and actually lay out the plot. So number 4 on my list is Shazam. Now, Zachary Levi gives one of the best superhero performances in the DCEU that I've seen. I love him as Shazam, and I think he did an awesome job. This movie had the best mixture of action and comedy, so I felt like it did a great job. Overall, it's a great family movie. It's also a great action movie in general. It's just a super double-sided superhero movie, and you don't get much of that these days. It's just you don't really get a good mix, and I think Shazam did it pretty well. The biggest issues with this movie do lie with the villain. He was super poorly developed, and overall the movie's ending was really anticlimactic and predictable. Before we get into the top 3, let me know your rankings for all of the DCEU movies in the comments down below. And at number 3, I have Aquaman. Aquaman is once again a very polarizing movie. The CGI for underwater fights and stuff like that, the physics were all super awesome. I love the fight sequences. I definitely did think the final sequence, the final battle, was dragged on for a little bit too long. I thought that it had a decent villain in this movie, but the setup for Black Manta was so awesome, and it did a great job setting up Aquaman 2 in general. This movie was also very, very vibrant, and sometimes it worked really well, sometimes it didn't. For example, in the temple scene where they're fighting Black Manta, that scene looked really, really beautiful with all the colors, but sometimes underwater with their super colorful pink and green suits, it looked kind of weird, but most of the time it looked pretty awesome. Overall, I thought this movie actually had great action, and I can't wait to see more of Mera and Volko in the next Aquaman movie. Number 2 on my list is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is one of my favorite superhero movies. I just like the way that they put out Wonder Woman's character. I love the way they did Diana Prince. I love the way all of the characters in the movie came together, and it told a great cohesive story. Diana Prince, played by Gal Gadot, is one of my favorite superhero castings of all time. Gal Gadot brought a great, charming charisma to the role, and I feel like overall she was the perfect person to play Wonder Woman. The chemistry between Steve Trevor and Diana Prince was really good, and it also made the ending of the movie a lot better, but overall I did think the ending of the movie was a little bit anticlimactic, but solely going off their chemistry, I thought the chemistry was A+. It's one of my favorite on-screen relationships in terms of superhero movies. I also like how the plot the action of the movie progresses really smoothly. We get to see Diana's origins. She slowly moves into the new world, meeting new people and seeing reality. She gets to see the good and bad of mankind, and overall the movie just transitions through all of these phases really, really smoothly. One of my least favorite things about this movie was the poorly developed villain. DCEU has a very big tendency of developing their villains very late in the film, or they barely ever actually develop the villains. In this movie, that was the case. They barely developed the villain until the very end, and it just made the entire movie anticlimactic. But moving on to number 1 on the list is Zack Snyder's Justice League. If you guys want to check out my full spoiler-free review of Zack Snyder's Justice League, you can click the link in the description down below. I also have a spoiler review in the description down below and a spoiler discussion and review with my friend Brantley, and that's also going to be in the description down below. But now to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, and I think that it's going to go down in history. Just the movement in general is going to be talked about forever. This movie was number 1, better than the theatrical release in every single way possible. I watched it a second time, and it made the movie even better for me. And if you guys haven't already seen it a second time, I really recommend you do so. The rewatch is 10 times better. This movie did a great job of excelling every single character. It did a great job with Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and The Flash. I would definitely say the Aquaman story and everything was tainted down a little bit, but I don't really mind it because we got to see so much of Cyborg and The Flash. Cyborg was the heart and soul of this movie, and I'm super happy that they chose him to be the middle of the movie. He had a great character arc, and he had a vital role in the movie's plot, and I'm super happy that they did what they did with him in this movie. I don't think it would have worked with any other character. I personally thought the first half of the movie was super boring, but the first half of the movie does build up the DCEU's world, and it shows us the history of the DCEU, and that makes the second half's payoff so much better. My only big gripe about this movie is the runtime. It is 4 hours. It did feel like it sped by the first time, but the second time I watched it, I felt like they could have cut out at least 30 to 40 minutes. And yeah guys, that was my rankings of all 10 DCEU films. If you guys haven't already hit that subscribe button, make sure to do so. Also turn notifications on so you don't miss any new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.